Hello, and welcome to Whiteberg City Builds. Today, I have for you the time-lapse video for the Market Square build of my town of Walhampton. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel so you can see my future videos. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. I start off with a row of 3 Georgian townhouses next to the church. These would have housed the richest merchants of the Market Square, built on top of old medieval foundations and plots. They have been here for a very long time. I've taken inspiration from 3 real townhouses in the town of Leamington for this build. They have a tree that grows across the front of them and actually sit next to the same church in real life. I'm doing a little bit of landscaping around these buildings. As you can see, I've put in a little blue path that won't stay blue, it will change to a cobblestone mix later on in the build. Moving on to the second townhouse, made it out of some dark stained clay as to add a little bit more effect to break up against the backdrop of pink we have here with all the brick. And then moving on to the third townhouse, it's very similar to the first one. This time the second window across the front has no glass in it, just a sort of little design thing. But yeah, so I tried to make this an interesting sort of build by adding some gardens to them at the back. As you can see there, I'm shaping some sort of angular shapes rather than actual straight gardens. This is to reflect upon the earlier sort of medieval influence of these plots. As you can see, they stick out into the graveyard of the church, which I'll actually do a little build on eventually one day. Having completed these 3 merchant houses, we move on to the most prominent building of the entire square, a very large corner shop. Within this shop reside several commercial premises. I believe the one I've put out on the high street would be a pub with a couple of rooms upstairs in it. I've taken inspiration from a real building, but to make it feel a bit more interesting, I've stuck a lot more detail on the front, as you'll see. The front facing the actual square is the one where I've added the most detail to, as this would be where most people would be conjugating around, having been at the market stalls and all of that, walking through. They would see this nice facade of this building. So that's what I've added here. And then once we move around to the other side, you'll see the windows change to, you get more windows on the wall, but there's less detail to them. I felt because this building is the biggest one here, it needs to be the most detailed one. I also add a little Whiteberg City flag into the wall just below the upper story window there. I felt the wall would look a bit plain without anything in there, so you got the blue stained clay, white and grey to symbolise the Whiteberg City logo. Moving on to the roof, I've gone for quite a high pitch on it, as I feel that would stand out a lot better against the other buildings I'm going to build later on next to this one. 2 dormer windows at the top, well, sort of gabled end windows at the top, and then 1 smaller dormer in the middle. I don't repeat the second window around the other side. You can see I've built some sort of centerpiece on the actual corner bit there. I think I put a light in there in a bit, but I can't quite remember if I did put a light in there or not, but it's a great place to put a light in. Building the shop fronts down here on the high street side, and putting the roof on for the finishing touches of this one. I don't show the building of the back of these ones because the footage became corrupted, but later on you'll see that I use a combination of red sandstone and brick to build in some sort of old feel to them. Moving on to some other buildings that call the Market Square home, we have a tall, skinny sandstone structure with a building next to it, much wider building. This one's a bank. I've gone for, having looked at quite a few Georgian buildings in towns around England, you can tell this is a similar structure to what most banks were built at the time, if they weren't a Lloyd's. I don't keep it as brick. I find we've had too much brick on this side already, so I changed it to a nice stained clay. Moving on to the final couple of buildings of this build, we have another skinny sandstone building going up. This is a coffee shop. I've actually gone for a different motif on the bottom layer here. I've gone for a darker sort of dark oak with some, I think it's grey concrete to sort of finish it off there. Gone for a few wider windows in this one just to break up the pattern a little bit. Carrying on that same motif around to this final building. This final building is going to be a pub that faces outwards onto what will be the Lord's Mayor house, and I'll build that in my next video, I believe. Carrying on the same style around the bottom with the grey concrete and the dark oak. This one's just another generic sort of, I would say, Georgian Victorian style. But I feel the windows at the bottom here really set this build off quite nicely. Putting the roof on now and coming around to the back, you'll see this detailing I've said about with the red sandstone and the brick to add some extra sort of level into it. And finally, no market square would be complete without some stalls for traders to sell their wares from. Adding a little fountain in the centre of the market as well for animals and livestock and people to gather water from while they're at the market. I start building one side of the market square and then add a second one over the other side. I've gone for a nice white and red striped canopy on each of the stall. It looks a little bit Christmassy, but it means later on in the year when we have a Christmas video we don't have to change it. I add two up here and then one further down behind the fountain. You'll see in a second as we pan around. And that about concludes the video really. This has been my first commentary over the top of a time lapse, so thank you for sitting through it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed this build and it's given you some inspiration. So please, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see some more, but thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.